Right, hello everyone. Thank you so much for having me today. It's lovely to speak to you all, be in a room with such enthusiastic people. I'm just going to talk to you about a project I've been involved with for about 8 years now, based in the south of the UK. So a little bit about me. Before this, I think it's worth mentioning, back in 2011, I sort of started my sort of conservation career as a placement student at Game and Wildlife Conservation Trust. And funnily enough, in that year was also Ryan and Merlin as well, who's based up in Scotland. So it's quite funny to be back in a room with those as well. So I trained as an ornithologist, and I sort of specialised in waders. And then I ended up back at the GWCT in 2015, where Andy brought me on to be involved in our Life Waders for Real project. That project ran up until 2019, and it's now ended but developed into sort of different things. So it's sort of turned into a farmer cluster, and we do various different projects alongside that, various different tracking projects, migration studies, and we're getting involved in different species as well. So we've all seen these graphs. Our main two species are lapwing, which are now red status, and redshank, which are amber. How long they stay amber, not too sure. Like I said, we're based in the Avon Valley, so we're down in the south of the UK, in Hampshire. It's an absolutely fantastic area. It's got every designation you can get on it. It's a SSSI, Ramsar site, SPA, and it's a just amazing river valley system filled with some really, really amazing people who are really motivated and really keen to do stuff for it. But unfortunately, Andy, along with other colleagues and RSPB, were monitoring the Avon Valley breeding wader numbers, and the numbers were still following these national trends, even though this is a really highly protected site. So back in 2014, Andy decided he needed to do something about this. He got all the farmers in the room and said, "Do you want to do something about this?" And they all said yes. So the LIFE project came out of that. One of the things we did early on in the project is trying to understand why people were involved in the project and what they were hoping to get out of it. So we did some farmer surveys and some farmer interviews, and it was very clear that everyone was keen. They maybe just needed a bit of support, a bit of extra guidance to actually pin down how we can do these different things and get those breeding waders doing well. So the Life Waders for Real project focused on 4 main aspects that we've all been talking about today: habitat, predators, people, and then with a big focus on monitoring, because if you can't monitor it and you can't feed back those results, it's really hard to keep people motivated and keep them going. And we also want to know, if it's not working, let's stop it and do something else instead. So habitat, absolutely crucial. If we don't have the habitat, we don't have the birds to nest in the first place. Our habitat was in pretty good nick. It just needed some extra tweaks. So we came in, we identified 4 main hotspot sites where we had good habitat, good numbers of, well, relatively good numbers of breeding waders, and where we could just do a little bit more. And we worked really closely with the farmers to do this. There's no point me turning up and saying, "Oh, put a scrape over there and dig a ditch over there," because it might completely impact what the farmers do and how they go about their work. So we worked really closely with them to make sure what we were advising and trying to implement was going to work for them. They also had insider knowledge. These guys have been working here for years. They know what parts of the field gets wet. They know what parts you have to be able to access. So working with them worked really well. And we were also really able to highlight what areas were important. Some of these areas are really hard to manage. They might be one of the last places you get in at the end of a season, just because it's so hard to work those areas. But if I can highlight how important they are, they might make a bit more effort to get those into the right condition in the following spring, because they know they're actually really, really important. Specific fields can make a real big difference. So we tried to create better nesting habitat. So we took out perching posts for predators. We took out sort of scrub lines that have encroached on some of the ditch systems to open up the fields and make them more better for nesting birds, and more to attract more birds into those areas as well. And we worked with a few local little groups as well. That was really nice. So we worked with Sparsholt College. We were able to bring, sort of ship in a few students at a time to do some of this habitat work. And we worked to create better brood rearing habitat. Again, this is absolutely crucial. You can get good nesting habitat relatively easy, but then leaving that onto the chick habitat can be a bit more tricky. And we wanted to tie up those areas as well, so they don't have to take their chicks too far from those good nesting habitats. I have to get this photo into every presentation I do. I absolutely love this photo of a muddy puddle. There's two reasons for this, really. One is that this is a really hard sell to a farmer who's trying to produce a lovely hay field. They don't want to see this. But what they do want to see, hidden in there, is this lovely big lapwing chick. So it highlights the habitat we need, but you can't sell that habitat if you're not producing those chicks. It's, you know, but when you get those chicks coming out of that habitat, it makes up for the fact that, okay, you've maybe lost a bit in that area, but you've got these fantastic birds coming out of it. And again, that photo highlights why that habitat is so good. Your chicks absolutely disappear in it, and you can hardly see it in that one. You can just about see it in there. Predators. We all know they're a problem. We didn't try and reinvent the wheel here. We just tried to trial some different methods that might be useful. So we trialed a number of non-lethal methods. We tried nest cages. In our instance, that didn't work for a number of reasons. What did work is temporary electric fencing. So maybe in areas where you can't do lethal control as effectively, or areas where you can access quite easily, and you can easily put out fences, these worked really, really well. But there was a number of caveats with that. You have to do good vegetation management, and you do have to be checking them as you go and making sure they're still effective for the whole of the season. And just like that photo of Ryan. So we aim to put our fences over quite larger areas. We weren't fencing individual nests that you might do with curlew. We're trying to fence 2-hectare plots and maybe get in 5 or 6 lapwing nests, a couple of redshank nests in each fence, to really make them worthwhile. We also worked with the keepers who are already out there. So Rupert's here today. Don't ask me any questions about this. Fire them straight to Rupert, sat over there. So we worked with the keepers who are already out there, trying to make their work a little bit more targeted to the right areas at the right time. But we learned, just as much from them as we were able to give advice to them as well. This photo, just like Merlin's, it's heartbreaking. I think Rupert sent me this photo about 2 o'clock in the morning, mid-breeding season. It's just absolutely heartbreaking. Yeah, Rupert was actually out with me the previous week ringing these chicks, and it's just devastating to then get an image of one seconds after it had been munched. One of the things that we learned through Rupert essentially is how important the pre-breeding work is. So this is just a short video, pre-breeding, of how a fox is using this landscape. This is one of our best breeding wadder fields, and this fox is just making an absolute beeline straight to the middle of the field where we've got a lovely wadder scrape. It's going all through. These are all lapwing dotted around the smaller white blobs. It goes straight through, straight to the middle of the field, and just plays around. And if this individual wasn't taken out, he's going to be out there every single night doing that. So that'd be for the whole of the breeding season. He'll be out there every single night. And after this clip, I don't think this fox was around for much longer. And then not long after that, this is one of the areas where we fence as well. So that if another individual comes into the area, it's got that extra bit of protection before someone's able to go in and take that out. But it knows exactly where it's going. I think it just really highlights how they use these fields, and they're so clever. They just make a beeline straight to the really important areas. People. None of this happens without the people. The habitat's not there, the predators aren't managed without the people. So we worked really hard to get to know the farmers we were working with. We'd have meetings every year where everybody was invited in. I think our biggest meeting, we had 45 people in the room, which was fantastic. But we also did lots of feedback. Are these measures working? How are you doing? A little bit of friendly competition with your neighbour. And we also bolstered that with one-to-one meetings to make sure there's getting specific advice to the right farms at the right time of the year. And again, that advice went both ways. We were learning as well. We weren't just dealing out the advice the whole time. We were learning from everybody and how they work the area. And then we were able to provide that exchange wider as well. We were able to hold events. We were able to bring in different organisations and get that knowledge exchange going further afield. The project has now ended, but we've moved on to a farmer cluster along with a number of other projects alongside of that. This works quite well. Different successes in different places, but I think it keeps the motivation going. We've officially got 14 members, but the reason the group works is that it's much wider than that. We involve all the keepers, tenant farmers, graziers, all the different people involved in the area, and we keep this going with meetings and events and training opportunities. It's just a little bit of a map showing how the site joins up. So it's all along the river valley, and we've got all farmers dotted along all along the river valley there. And we're trying to build on the work that we've done with breeding waders and extend that out to different groups. So I hope to look at bats. We do some work with water voles. We do some work with barn owls. And more recently, we started looking at river health. That all feeds into the wider situation. And again, I think this works because it creates more of a sense of community, a bit of friendly competition, and a bit of gives people a bit of a confidence boost to give things a go. Some of these things, they're actually quite hard to do and you need to get the right permission, and that's quite scary. You don't want to get it wrong. Sometimes people prefer just not to bother. So I can come in and I can give advice and help. I can help with licensing. I can help with finding the right expert to bring into the group. And then just to give you an idea of what we've managed to achieve and how it's carrying on. So alongside all of this, we did, like I said, really detailed monitoring. We did lots of nest monitoring, lots of chick monitoring. I'm not going to go into too much detail on that. But what we have highlighted, I quite like this graph, well, this picture. It's quite an interesting one. We learned quite a lot through a lot of our radio tracking work and how chicks can move. I never would have thought young chicks can cross a main section of a river. This one happened to do it after 25 days, but we actually had young chicks crossing the main section of a big river 3 or 4 days old, so they really can shift when they're little teeny. And I think when you're trying to monitor productivity, that kind of information is so useful, because otherwise you just assume you've got different birds in different places, but actually they can really shift. We did quite a lot of colouringing. I think that's really useful because it starts to give you an idea of your birds coming back into your population and understanding that you are creating your own population. You're not bringing birds in from other areas. This is the graph which we all want to see. It's that population increase. It's a steady increase as well. I think that really highlights that it's going to be more sustainable with a steady long-term increase. You're not just creating the habitat and then flooding in. It's that steady increase. And what I'm so pleased to see is that we are still seeing that increase after the main bulk of the projects ended. None of this would have happened without Rupert. So yeah, anybody want to buy him a drink later, buy that man a drink, not me. But we have continued to see this increase, which is fantastic. Don't worry too much about this graph, but again, it highlights that productivity has been high. Out of the 5 years of a project, 3 of those years, it was over that threshold to maintain our stable population. So we are creating enough birds coming back into our population. And our redshank as well. So most of this was focused at lapwing, but we had lovely increases in redshank. And in the southwest of the UK, we don't have many redshank at all. So to get this increase, it's really, really great. And through our more recent colouring work of redshank, they're really coming back. These birds don't have that many options of places to go, so they're coming back to our area, which is just fantastic. And redshank, they're a bit of a harder sell, redshank. They're quite not as well known, they're not quite as exciting. But we've got really excited about redshank now, and everyone's absolutely thrilled about their redshank, especially with the colouring. I can tell people their bird is back. It's back in the same field, in the same area, and it's nesting again. And that really keeps people excited. And that's it. Thank you very much.